Speaking of Jews, this next hadith provides an excellent look into Muslim minds.
Tabari and Ishaq. Hassan was with the women and children. A Jew passed by and began to walk around his settlement. There was no one to protect them while the apostle and his companions were at the Meccans' throats. So I said, Hassan, this Jew is walking around. I fear he will point out our weaknesses while the Muslims are too busy to attend to us. So go down and kill him.
All this poor Jewish man did was take a walk. Yet in the paranoid mind of a Muslim woman, he was at war.
Tabari and Ishaq. Allah forgive you, daughter of Abd al-Muttalib, Hassan said. You know that I am not the man to do it.
Muslim sages reject this tradition because they are embarrassed by Hassan's cowardice. They aren't, however, troubled by what happened next.
When he said that to me, I saw that nothing could be expected from him. I girded myself, took a club, and having gone down from the fortress to the man, I struck him with the club until I killed him. When I had finished with him, I returned to the fortress and said, Hassan, go down to him and strip him. Only his being a man kept me from taking his clothes. Hassan replied, I have no need for his spoils.
The Jewish man was so menacing, a Muslim woman beat him to death with a club. And Islam was so corrosive, all the Muslim murderer could think about was stealing his possessions. Fundamental Islam did terrible things to people. This woman was so morally disoriented. She had no qualms about clubbing an unarmed man to death, but was too modest to strip him. In a hadith that haunts us today, Mohammad told his fellow militants that deception was an authorized Islamic strategy.
Tabari and Ishaq. The messenger and his companions continued in the fear and distress that Allah had described in the Koran. Then Nuaym came to the Prophet and said, I have become a Muslim, but my tribe does not know of my Islam. So command me whatever you will. Muhammad said, make them abandon each other if you can, so that they will leave us, for war is deception.
Remember, the Pledge of Aqaba established Islam as a declaration of war against all mankind. Now we're being told that war is deception. That makes Islam deception. With prophetic encouragement, our neophyte Muslim went out to mislead non-Muslims.
Tabari and Ishaq. Nuaym went to the Qurayza. He had been their drinking companion in the time of ignorance. He said, You know my affection for you and the special ties between us. Yes, they said, you are not a person whom we doubt.
If he was honest before Islam and a liar now, what changed him?
Nuaym said, The Quraysh and the Ghatafan have come to make war on Muhammad, and you have aided them against him.
By saying this, Nuaym tied himself directly to Sa'd and Muhammad, and thus identified himself as a Muslim. Therefore, this dialogue isn't believable. Nuaym continued.
Tabari and Ishaq. The position of the Quraysh is not like yours. This land is your land. Your wealth, your children, and your women are in it. You can't move. The Quraysh live elsewhere. If they see an opportunity and booty, they will take it. If it turns out otherwise, they will return home and leave you exposed to Muhammad. You will lose if you have to deal with him alone. So don't support the Quraysh until you take hostages from them as assurance that they'll stay. They said, You have given good advice.
Long story short, Nuaym manages to cross the impenetrable trench and scampers off to chat with the Quraysh.
Tabari. You know my affection for you and how I have separated from Muhammad. Word has come to me of something that I consider my duty to pass on as a matter of sincere advice. But keep it to yourselves, what I say.
Again, this is ridiculous. Nuaym volunteered for this mission because no one knew that he was a Muslim. If that were so, why did he begin by saying that he had separated from Muhammad? And while we're pondering that, consider what other things Muslims might be willing to lie about if they are willing to renounce their religious affiliation. Peace? Tolerance, perhaps?
Ishaq. Then no, Nuaym said. The Jews reject what they did regarding relations with Muhammad. They told him, "Will you forgive us if we take nobles from the Quraysh and give them to you so that you can behead them? If the Jews ask for hostages, don't comply."
So, with the Meccans duped, the Qurayza Jews crossed the impenetrable trench and told them,
"We will not fight on your side until you give us hostages, for we fear that war tests your mettle. When fighting becomes difficult, you will go to Mecca and leave us alone with this man. We do not have the strength to fight with Muhammad."
The ruse worked, and the multinational alliance fell apart. Then, doing what he did best, Satan whipped up some nasty weather.
Ishak. Allah sent against them bitter cold winter nights and a wind that overturned their cooking pots, blowing away their tents. This combined with the disagreement and how Allah had disrupted their unity sowed distrust.
So
Muhammad began to wonder what they were doing. Tabari. The prophet asked, "Who will go and spy on the enemy?" The messenger stipulated that should he come back, Allah would cause him to enter paradise, but no one stood up. The prophet prayed and then uttered the same words, but no one volunteered. Again he asked, "Whoever goes may be my companion in paradise." Yet none stood, so intense was the fear, hunger, and cold.
no one believed Mohammed. The first Muslim militants were obviously in it for the money, for the spoils of piracy, and the thrill of terror, not the promises of paradise. If only today's martyrs understood the implications of this hadith, won directly from those who fought alongside Islam's lone profiteer. Cold, hungry, frustrated, duped and windblown, the merchants of Mecca simply gave up and went home. As a result, they were about to learn a harsh lesson, a lesson America has failed to heed. The consequence of attacking Islam and then departing, allowing it to fester, is fatal.
Tabari. The next morning the Prophet left the trench and went back to Medina with the Muslims, and they laid down their weapons.
But not for long. The most disgusting tale in the sorry history of Islam was about to unfold. Before we turn the page and deal with the Islamic Holocaust, let's close the book on the trench. Speaking of it, the 33rd surah says,
in verse 22, "When the believers saw the clan's forces, they said, 'This is what Allah and His Messenger promised us.' It added to their faith, obedience, and submission. Among the believers are men who have been true to their covenant with Allah and have gone out for Jihad, or holy fighting. Some have completed their vow to the extreme and have been martyred, fighting and dying in His cause, and some are waiting, prepared for death in battle."
This is about as chilling as anything we have read thus far. Good Muslims can't wait to die killing infidels for Allah. One translation says they are
waiting and prepared to die.
It's the suicide bomber's oath.